So, this is episode 2 of She Doesn't Know, where I talk about neuroscience, creative obsession, and a few questions for God. To be honest, I recorded this episode quite abruptly, which I didn't really want to, but today I kind of want to dive deep into theta waves. If you guys haven't heard of what theta waves are, it's a very interesting subject to get into. So, getting more into this, we need to kind of understand how our brain operates in theta mode. So, when your brain is at its most creative, it's often not in a high-speed, hyper-focused state. And this state is called theta. Theta brain waves operate at a frequency for about 4 to 8 hertz, which is a slow rhythm that shows up when you're deeply relaxed, daydreaming, or kind of drifting into space. You know that kind of aha moment that you sometimes have? Like you got this crazy new idea or thought of an exceptional concept for a story or a film. Well, that's when the theta waves are kind of moving around your head. So when this happens, we're at our peak creativity. And there are ways to kind of tap into theta for creative work. And this is where mindfulness, meditation, rhythmic activities, all of these come in, right? So light exercise, listening to music, kind of relaxation, these are the things that kind of slow down your brain activity. The theta waves come in when you're completely relaxed and you're kind of flowing with the vibe. And a lot of musicians, storytellers, actors are really able to tap into this side of their brain naturally because that's just how they think and that's just how they're wired. Some people are wired more naturally with their theta brainwaves, while some people find it more difficult. So when I was young, I tended to drift off a lot. Right? I used to be in classrooms and not pay attention and just, think about other things. Like I would make up these stories in my head. I would, think of, like when I get older, these are the things that I'm going to do and this is where I'm going to be. And I always imagine myself living in New York City, having these friends, and my apartment was going to look like this. I was going to be a famous pop star. And what I did was take all of these ideas that I had, and I had this diary and I would write them down. I would draw visuals of all the things that I imagined. So I was a child and I hope to be an adult one day and imagine my life a certain way where I had all these cool friends. I had, a famous boyfriend, and I was a pop star, and I was living in New York. And in a sense, because my imagination was so vivid and so lively, and I just kind of didn't care for the world that I was currently living in my head, I was living this character that I had built up that was going to be me 10 years from now. That's all I kept thinking about. I would think about it while I was going to school. I would think about it while I was in school. I would think about it while I was falling asleep at night. And in a sense, I kind of manifested it because as a child, our theta waves are so much stronger. We don't have the filtration of what is realistic, what is possible, what is not. As we get older, we become more strategic, more logical, more realistic, but truthfully, in a sense, nothing is realistic. We can always bend the ways of reality. And that's what a lot of creative people are able to do. And essentially, when I wrote these ideas down, when I wrote down my thoughts and these visuals that I had going, I kind of believed it. And I believed that this would be my life. And 10 years from then, I was living in New York City and I had a lot of cool friends And I did all the things that I manifested, essentially, in my diary. If I go back and I read that diary, which I did like a year ago, I was actually quite surprised to see how accurate some of the descriptions of my life were. In fact, my apartment also resembled the drawing that I drew in my diary. And manifestation is a result of someone with really, really strong theta waves. And no one really talks about, how important your brain activity, how important it is for you to be in tune with your mind and your body when you manifest. There's a lot of pop culture references and talk about manifestation and mindfulness and turning your dreams into reality, how to make money, etc., etc. But without the essential tool, which is theta and being in theta state and being in flow state, you can't really achieve any of these things. Theta brainwaves actually dominate the early stages of sleep, so particularly your REM sleep. Sensory fragments, emotions, memories, these all come to life and become so much more vivid. But what's fascinating is that these dreams that you're having aren't random. They're a form of unfiltered creative storytelling. This is where your mind experiments with possibilities, tests emotional scenarios, and plays with alternative versions of reality. Now, a lot of neuroscientists have actually found that dream imagery often borrows from real experiences, but then it reshapes them into symbolic or exaggerated narratives, almost like your subconscious is trying to communicate in metaphors, which, in my opinion, sounds really poetic. It's almost like a dreamlike sequence in a movie, right? Becomes a playground for lucid dreaming. And people who are very, very imaginative, who have very strong theta waves, are able to lucid dream. In fact, they're able to wake up the next day and remember everything that they dreamt of. I'm one of those people, actually. I usually remember most of my dreams. In fact, I write some of them down because they really help me when I'm trying to craft a story or a cool idea. I always refer back to some of my dreams. Now, I don't remember every single detail, but I remember most of my dream, and if I have forgotten some of it, it usually comes back to me because it feels like I was at that place, at that spot. And it's almost like I traveled back and forth, and I completely remember the journey and all of the characters and pretty much everything that happened, unlike a lot of people who usually forget about their dreams. Lucid dreamers have an unusual grasp over their brain state. They can maintain enough conscious awareness to kind of direct the plot of their dreams without waking themselves up. This is essentially voluntary navigation of the theta state. And it's a skill that can be trained through mindfulness, dream journaling, and pre-sleep intention setting. So basically, when you're able to tap into theta intentionally, you're accessing the same mental pathways that both fuel creativity and self-awareness. So this is why people who regularly enter this state, whether through dreaming or meditation or deep flow, they often describe this place where inspiration feels effortless, ideas come more vividly, and, reality feels just more malleable. And most people aren't able to think of things symbolically. Everybody tends to think of things that are tangible. But what society in 2025 doesn't understand is that life and this world is not tangible. Everything around us is intangible. The only things in life that are tangible were built by humans, like society, like work, school, family structuring, all of this. This was built by governments, by capitalism, by society to keep us in our place. But nature is intangible. The feeling of love is intangible. Friendship, emotion, fear, all of these things, you can feel it, but you can't touch it. Money is tangible, correct? But your means of getting money don't always have to be tangible. Now, what an astrologer does is achieve money through intangible means, whereas a data analyst achieves it through tangible means by offering a service that gives direct results which you can see and you can apply. And the funny thing is that because everything has become so tangible over time, in fact, creativity in itself has become so tangible in 2025 that we need to analyze our social media. We need to analyze the content that we put out. We need to think of 5 different hooks before putting out a video or a reel or something interesting that we believe in. That creativity is no longer flowing through theta waves. It's flowing through optimization, structuring, analyzing, metrics, and the world has become a very different place. And a lot of what is creative isn't quite appreciated as it was 20 years before. In fact, it's not even understood. People don't want to dive deeper or think of things from different varied perspectives because people are just not able to do it and they feel stupid or inferior. I had this very strange experience with a client where I presented a particular creative ad to them and they told me that I don't understand what this is. This does not look good. It's not making any sense. In fact, they were quite rude about it. And I didn't understand why the client had to be so rude about it. If they didn't understand it, they could just ask me, like, what does this mean? What are you trying to say through your ad copy? I don't understand the creative. But what actually happens is that when people don't understand something, they feel offended by it because it reminds them that they are not smart enough to get it. And unconsciously, they feel that they need to put down the other person or the creative or the artist in order to feel superior because they just don't get it. That's simple. It does not mean your creative is bad. It does not mean your work is not making any sense, as they said. It's just that they are not equipped, like brain-wise, to understand the kind of symbolism, the kind of depth, and the kind of thought you've put into your craft. So if you like this episode, please share it around. Through my experiences, help you regain better brain power, more creativity, and put out good messages into the world and just create better overall. Thank you guys, and I will see you in the next one.